Let's roll! I got some lamb shanks here today, but this is basically an exercise in braising. You can substitute those with short ribs or any other tough cut of meat. We're also gonna need some sort of a deep dish or a pot. If you have a Dutch oven, that's ideal. I'm gonna sear these directly in the oven under the broiler. Because of their shape, they're kinda awkward to sear on the pan. I'm gonna hit them with some salt and some flour. The flour is gonna do two things. It's gonna help the browning and it's gonna thicken the braising liquid down the line. This is an important step, so don't skip it. Searing and browning the meat before you put it in for the long haul is going to imbue the braising liquid with so much flavor as it's cooking in it. And the same goes for the vegetables. We can get those going as the shanks are searing. We're gonna give some carrots, celery and onion a rough chop, and then we're gonna throw the holy trinity into a hot pan. Season the vegetables with a couple of pinches of salt and let them cook for a few minutes. As soon as they soften up and start picking up some color, it's time to add a couple of tablespoons of tomato puree. We're gonna give that a good stir so that we cook out that raw teeny flavor out of the puree. Then cook it for a few more minutes until you form some nice caramelization. After 10-15 minutes under the broiler, your shanks should be looking and sounding something like this. Throw the vegetables into the pot with the shanks and spread them out evenly for no real reason. There's so much flavor still left on that pan though, so we're gonna use the red wine that's gonna be the base of our braising liquid to deglaze the pan. And get yourself something decent, okay? Don't use anything that you wouldn't drink. Turn up the heat, bring up the wine to a boil and pick up all the bits from the bottom. Back in the pot, we can add some aromatics. Fresh rosemary, thyme and garlic go really good with any braise. Don't worry about peeling, we're gonna strain everything out later. Add the wine and some stock of your choice. I'm using half and half beef and chicken because that's just what I had. Use enough liquid so that it covers the shanks 3/4 of the way up. If you have a lid, put that on but not all the way, or if you're using foil like I am, leave some vents to allow for evaporation. We're gonna throw this thing in the oven at 175 Celsius or 350 Fahrenheit. Cooking times are gonna vary depending on your oven, but after about 2.5 hours, take it out and have a look. If you think that your shanks need a little bit more, give them a flip and put them back in uncovered for another 30-40 minutes. After exactly 2.5 hours, I thought mine were perfect. Ideally, you want them fork tender, but not really falling off the bone. Take the shanks out of the pot and put them aside while we deal with the braising liquid. As I mentioned earlier, we're gonna strain out all the vegetables. And this is where you're gonna have to make a decision. Some people like to serve those along with the shanks. I'm not one of those people, but maybe you are. And make sure you strain out every last bit of that liquid gold. Then take care to skim as much or as little of that fat until you're left with a beautiful, rich, luxurious braising liquid. That we're gonna turn into a sauce. Back into the pan it goes along with a few bay leaves because we forgot to add those earlier, and we're gonna crank the heat up until it comes up to a simmer. Keep reducing it until it becomes thick and syrupy. How far you want to go is entirely up to you, but as soon as you've reached your desired thickness, it's time to add the shanks back in. At this point, we're cooking on the lowest heat. All we're doing now is reheating the shanks and giving them a nice glaze with that beautiful sauce. You can put those on the back burner, and in the meantime we can take care of our polenta. Throw that in the pan with your liquid of choice. I'm using chicken stock, but whatever you're using, remember the proportions. A ratio of 1:4 is going to give you a relatively tight polenta, whereas 1:5 is going to give you a more creamy one. Think something like risotto. Again, that's up to your preference. Now, this is not something that you can walk away from. You have to keep stirring it, otherwise it's going to burn. Once it's absorbed all the liquid, we can start adding some optional seasonings. And when I say optional, I mean mandatory. Polenta loves fresh thyme, so if you have some, give it to it. We're also gonna crack some fresh black pepper, and if you're using water or unseasoned chicken stock, this is where you're gonna add some salt as well. We're also gonna throw in a big knob of butter and some freshly grated Parmesan. Cue the heat and keep stirring until everything is nicely incorporated and you reach your desired consistency. Consistency, that's the one. The last thing we need to do is a quick mint gremolata. For that, we're gonna zest 1 whole lemon, grate a clove of garlic, and give a few fresh mint leaves a fine slice. This dish is ultra rich, so the mint gremolata is gonna lift it up a little bit and cut through some of that richness. To plate, we're gonna spread some of our creamy polenta, on top of which we're gonna lay down, or stand up, our beautiful shanks. There's no way you haven't seen this coming, but we're gonna give it an extra glaze with the sauce. And of course, some of that fresh gremolata goes on top. And there you have it. Our lamb shanks with creamy polenta and fresh mint gremolata are done. Braising is one of those fundamental techniques that should be in everybody's cooking repertoire. And when you taste this, you're gonna know exactly why. That meat is sweet and sticky and succulent. And that sauce is so incredibly rich and deep in flavor that transcends this experience from something comforting into almost something spiritual. You just need to give it a try and you'll know what I mean. Happy Easter, everyone. Roll out!